The Bulletin continues with Larry Kane.
This town, actually this entire metropolitan area, is really big on nostalgia. Memories of days gone by that still light up your soul on a gray and dreary day. And when you talk to people about those days, they always go on about one attraction. A long pier that extended into the ocean, where you could smell the salt water as you strolled along, licking your taffy or trying to stuff that cotton candy into your mouth. It was the pier that still lives in the memories of hundreds of thousands of people. People like News 3's Dick Sheeran, who shows us what it was like back then on Atlantic City's Steel Pier.
It stretched a half-mile out to sea, and inside its gates, Steel Pier was literally a thrill a minute.
3 feature movies, 2 stage shows, dancing, matinee and evening.
Saw Perry Como there, Dinah Shore, the Ink Spots.
We got to meet many of the stars. We met the Temptations, we met the Supremes.
The clowns, the divers, and the high diving horse.
It was a place where Mom and Dad got rid of you for the day, especially on the rainy days when they didn't know what to do with you.
From 1898 to 1978, it was part concert hall, part carnival, part wonderland, a place where millions went each summer to be dazzled. Once upon a time, Atlantic City was known as the playground of the world, and the Steel Pier was the very heart of it. Anybody who grew up in the Delaware Valley has memories of that old place. I remember sitting in one of the theaters with my mother when comedian Fat Jackie Leonard came out on the stage and said, "Anybody from South Philly can put on their shoes and get the hell out of here." I turned to my mother and said, "Did he really mean that?" Steel Pier has a rich history filled with glory and tragedy. It began as a Sunday social and religious gathering place for Quakers who rode the train from Philadelphia to the shore at the turn of the century. The pier grew and changed owners, and by the 1920s, well-dressed boardwalkers would go there to hear singers like Rudy Valley. But in the early 1930s, Steel Pier made a splash heard across the world with a carnival act that people still talk about today, the high diving horse. Horse and diver took the perilous plunge into a pool of water from a 40-foot tower that looked out on the ocean.
As my husband often says, it was like a vacation with pay.
Arnett French was one of the pier's first high divers. 16-year-old Arnett earned a whopping $75 a week to ride the horse.
I was just a young girl, and most young kids like thrill rides, and it was like a thrill ride. You know, it was each time it was different. It was thrilling and fun. I liked it. I mean, you couldn't do it if you were afraid of it.
Oh, this is you, and believe it or not.
It was as a diver that Arnett met her husband, Jake. He drove a speedboat in the water circus. The two have been married for 60 years. And by the way, they still call each other honey. In the 1930s, Jake's boat would pull his wife at high speed on skis in the water circus. Sometimes a brave and playful pooch named Rex the Wonder Dog went along for the ride.
The only problem Rex had, he would get so excited he'd stand right at the end of the board, and once in a while he'd flip off, but most of the time he stayed on. But it was hard. I used to pull his tail and say, "Come back, Rex." You know, I didn't want him to fall over in front of the board. He could have gotten hurt.
The water circus could be a rough place to work. Arnett says she had plenty of bumps and scrapes. But her sister Sonora, who also rode the horse, suffered a tragic loss.
Most times if they did a plunge dive, the horse broke the water for you. But this day it was a really straight dive, and it broke blood vessels in her eyes. And she went to a doctor, and he said, "Oh, it'll clear up." So she kept on diving, and with a couple of days later, her vision faded, and they went to a different doctor, and he put her right in the hospital. It was detachment of the retina. But had she stopped immediately, and had that blood drawn off, probably wouldn't have became blind.
Sonora! What is she? These people didn't pay good money to see a blind girl kill herself. Sonora, don't!
Sonora's blindness was permanent. Her story became the subject of a recent movie called Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken. In the movie's closing scene, as in real life, Sonora decided to continue diving, even without her sight.
She said, well, after all, I've been doing it for 6 or 7 years, and I know how to do it. And when the horse comes up the tower, all I have to do is feel for him and then jump on, just like normal. She got so many letters telling her what an inspiration she was to people not to let a handicap slow them down, that she decided, well, if that's the way they feel, I guess it's all right.
Into the 1940s, Steel Pier became a haven for the big band sound. You could sun on the deck by day and dance to the best bands in the land by night. Tommy Dorsey, Benny Goodman, and Harry James with his lead singer Frank Sinatra, all were regulars. Ed Davis didn't miss a beat back then. He was a big band disc jockey on radio station WFPG, right on Steel Pier. And 7 nights a week all summer long, he introduced the bands on stage and to a live radio audience.
We'd say good evening, everyone, from a beautiful, breeze-swept marine ball.
George Hammond Pier, a half mile out over the ocean, on the boardwalk in Atlantic City. CBS Radio presents music from the creative world of Stan Kenton.
These people had only heard them on record or on radio broadcasts. So when they came to Atlantic City, they could see, and in many cases, talk to these band leaders. I got autographs for the people. They would be standing, and they'd hand me their program. And they'd say, will you get Tommy Dorsey's autograph for me?
During World War II, an enterprising circus booking agent named George Hammond Sr. bought Steel Pier and brought a carnival atmosphere to the boardwalk. There were boxing kangaroos, cats that played poker, flagpole sitters, men shot out of a cannon, and parakeets that told your fortune.
He would run down the ramp into the house and then pick out a fortune, and then walk back down the ramp and drop it into the customer's hand. And that was a dime.
Shelley Wentz and her mother Ann ran the fortune-telling temple. Ann says although there were many birds who worked the crowd, there was only one.
Irving. Irving was my favorite because everybody that went by, I have articles about Irving. They called him the perfidious bird because he always told them that they'd come into a lot of money and be wealthy.
And what else would a mysterious parakeet-picked fortune foretell?
It may have told you you're going to take a new journey. It may have told you you're going to be lucky in love or unlucky in love. It may have told you that you have a friend that's stabbing you in the back.
There was one little lady that came up every single summer, and she was about, I would say, 75 to 78 years old. And at one time, one of the birds told her that she was going to live to be 86 years old. And I think that's what really kept her alive. I knew she was alive at 82, and she believed that fortune thoroughly.
In the 1950s, another Hammond, George Jr., started taking over bookings for his dad, and the big bands gave way to rock and roll. George Hammond Jr. remembers the rock and roller who got away.
1957, I got a call from the William Morris office offering me, this is in February, a brand new singer who looked like he was going to be hot as the dickens for Labor Day weekend. And we talked about it, and I said, well, what is the singer's name? And this guy said, Elvis. And I said, look, America will go for a Pat, a Harry, a Frank. They'll never go for a guy with a crazy name like Elvis. I never heard of the name, so I turned it down.
But the next summer, Hammond did take a chance on an untested singer, Ricky Nelson. The result, pandemonium, and the largest crowd in Steel Pier's history.
Fools rush in where angels fear to tread.
Henny Youngman was on the show. Theater was packed with kids. And he's out there saying, take my wife, will you? And the kids say, you take your wife. Get off the stage. We want Ricky. We want Ricky.
Steel Pier even had its own live dance show on TV. From 1958 to 1978, Ed Hurst hosted Summertime on the Pier. The show featured the latest dances and popular performers like Teddy Pendergrass. Ed Hurst says all the big stars grace Summertime on the Pier, but he says viewers best remember the show for its beauty shots of the shore.
There you are. The scenery was the best. You can imagine if you're sitting back in the hot city, Philadelphia, Trenton, Wilmington, and you can see boats coming into the camera. You can see the high diving horse diving into the tank. You can see some of the circus acts as relief shots between the kids dancing. It was just good summertime viewing.
By the mid-60s, Atlantic City was losing its glamour. High-speed air travel, air conditioning, and backyard swimming pools gave people new ways to escape the summer heat. The grand hotels were crumbling, and by 1978, just about the time casino gambling arrived, Steel Pier was fading from the landscape. We're standing on the current version of Steel Pier. This one right in front of the Taj Mahal Casino owned by Donald Trump. Now, anybody who remembers the original certainly would have difficulty recognizing the place. There's some carnival rides on the pier that will open up again this summer, but it's nothing like the original. Well, I guess it's true what they say. Nothing lasts forever. Maybe it's not meant to. But anybody who ever made it to Steel Pier has memories that will last a lifetime.
I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed watching that. If you're going to the old Steel Pier today, while you're on the amusement rides, if you listen very carefully, maybe you'll hear the gasp of the crowd when Sonora took her dive. Or maybe you'll hear the sounds of the big band still floating through the air. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. When the Bulletin returns.